sure you want to play this game? I'm afraid you'd lose.
I've just reviewed the 2009 Sherlock Holmes film, so let's waste no time at all and dive straight into the sequel. Sherlock Holmes, A Game of Shadows, brings forth the man who was barely even seen in the first film. We knew who it was, but we had no face to go with his name. He was cloaked, hooded, and hid within the shadows. Perhaps that's because they hadn't cast him yet, but character-wise, it suited his personality. Well, no longer, as taking the reins as Holmes's arch-nemesis in Professor James Moriarty was Jared Harris, and my word, again I feel the casting crew were spot on with the man that they chose. Not only does Harris exude the same charm and charisma as Holmes does, he too possesses a distinct touch of fear, and that is what you look for in a villain. And the writers stamped down on that from the off, as Moriarty poisoned Irene Adler before even the title sequence rolled. That was a sure way to nail down early that Moriarty was taking 0 prisoners, and him killing one of the main characters from the first film was quite a way to make his introduction. Now, we already know that this iteration of Holmes is a much more action-oriented one than many of the others that came before it. Well, this one has even more action than the previous film, but on this occasion I do feel that at times it may slightly overdo it. I didn't feel there were as many investigation scenes as before. In saying that, Moriarty was never one to leave any evidence, so I guess that supports why, but a little bit too strong is probably the phrase I would use in terms of the action compared with the rest of the film. It was still very good, don't get me wrong, and I enjoyed it as much as I did the first one, and more so on occasion, especially towards its ending. Just the dynamic of Holmes versus Moriarty was so much more easier to get into than Holmes and Lord Blackwood. Moriarty is seen as a true equal. Their interactions with one another were noteworthy standout scenes, and their very first conversations with one another drew the battle lines before the two properly began to square off. Now, as a criminal mastermind, Moriarty was interested in profit and was investing his money heavily into buying large shares in various companies around Europe. One of them was in the production of guns, and him igniting a war between France and Germany would generate a demand for them, which would see his profits rise through the sky. Holmes and Watson caught wind of his plans, but he was never someone who would leave loose ends. He was assassinating some of these companies' owners to further establish his power, and removing anyone with even a hint of a connection to it all. So it was a good thing Holmes did mostly forget about Watson's stag do, as he might not have been in the right place at the right time to save Madame Simsa. Noomi Rapace steps into the hole left by Irene's departure, and her connection to all of this was that Moriarty's experiment of putting one face onto another was done on her brother, and as it happened, her brother René was a key piece into starting this war. He was masquerading as a guest at the Peace Summit, and after arriving there with no clue of who René could be, Holmes, Watson and Simsa had to deduce everyone and everything around them if they were to stop Moriarty's plan in time, or a war could be the deciding result. And those final 15 minutes or so was the best section of the film. The focus was on identifying what wasn't in the correct place, how people acted, and the search for René was getting narrower by the moment. Simsa and Watson had that job in their capable hands as Holmes stepped out onto the balcony as his game of wits with Moriarty was about to come to a close. Their chess game summed up their mind games brilliantly, and as both parties realised Holmes would never win once it came down to a fight, he had to improvise to make sure Moriarty would never get a chance to lay his hands on Watson or his wife. And thus Holmes sacrificed himself to remove his foe completely from the equation, and seemingly met his demise right alongside him. My overall verdict for Sherlock Holmes, A Game of Shadows is a strong 7 out of 10. While I enjoy many elements of this film more than its first instalment, overall the story can get a little convoluted. There's a lot going on. The tension between France and Germany, which Moriarty was attempting to boil. There's Sims's brother being involved as a face-changed hitman. And then there's the central rivalry, which is naturally the best part of the film, in Holmes versus Moriarty. In terms of quality, this film and the first Sherlock Holmes are on a very similar level, but with an extra few flaws here, I would elevate the first film, if ever so slightly, above this one. The rivalry element again was top notch. Watching Robert Downey Jr. versus Jared Harris was the best aspect of the film. Moriarty targeting the people who Holmes was closest to made this a personal battle. He was looking to bring Holmes's world down around him, and collateral, as he called it, had already hit Miss Adler, and he was intent on seeing a similar fate befall Watson and his wife. Poor Watson, he had finally whisked away his new bride on their honeymoon, only to be saved by Holmes after men were sent to kill them. That was enough to convince Watson to rejoin Holmes to take care of Moriarty, and the pair's chemistry just continued to grow. They clearly enjoy working with one another, and their continued disputes were again, to be honest, the highlights of this franchise. The ending section with the chess game took my overall favourite spot, but there were some other little additions that were small but appreciated. Appearing at Holmes's funeral with a policeman from Scotland Yard, we saw Lestrade briefly, and there was the boatman from London, and it's little details like that which I can admire the thought for. Now, bizarre seems to run in the Holmes family, as here we also met Sherlock's brother Mycroft, played by Stephen Fry. He was fine, if not a little over the top, but considering what Holmes drinks on a daily basis, over the top is something that isn't abnormal in their family tree. Now, to hop back to Moriarty, we never actually find out why he stole a piece from the machine in the first film, and I was a little disappointed we didn't get to see that signature little gun contraption that he used as well. Other than those couple of things, he was a pillar in this film's foundations. So, is he dead? Well, I expect so. However, you would have thought the same for Holmes, considering the drop that they both went through. He took Mycroft's oxygen breather, of course, which explains how he could survive drowning, but still, even for Holmes, that wasn't a small fall. But I guess he makes his name and living out of achieving the unexpected. Overall, I feel that for A Game of Shadows, the story arc was weaker than the first film, where the villain was far superior. Moriarty, after being teased to us, was centre stage for this sequel and provided the ideal candidate to propel this franchise. The question remains even now, will we ever get a third instalment? Likelihood of that is a yes, as talks apparently are happening now and moving closer. I for one hope that they can get a script nailed down and can get it out to us as soon as possible. So what did you guys think of Sherlock Holmes, A Game of Shadows? Did you feel this sequel was stronger than its predecessor or not? And how would you move forward if Sherlock Holmes 3 ever came out? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Please leave a like, comment and subscribe if you enjoyed the review. And I'll see you on the next one.